Welcome back to The World Tonight. We've heard a lot of rhetoric about immigration this week, and I wanted to bring into the conversation a bit of a personal perspective, not least because my parents were immigrants who did come here legally. But our guest right now has her own story to share. Her name is Olayemi Olurin, and she is a public defender doing great work in Queens, New York. Olayemi, thank you for joining me tonight. What was your reaction to hearing Vice President Kamala Harris tell people in Guatemala, do not come, and then in Mexico, talking about the many legal pathways there are to come to the United States?
It's frustrating. It's frustrating because immigration is one of those things that everybody's constantly talking about, but so little people know anything about it legally. Even other lawyers, right? They constantly say, you know, do it the right way or you can come legally, but no one actually talks about that in depth and the fact that it's not an option. Americans tend to think you can just apply for citizenship, like, oh, fill out some paperwork. If you want to, you can. And it's not like that. Oftentimes, it's not an option at all. There are very little paths. You're not eligible. Like, I've been in America for almost 13 years and I'm not eligible for citizenship and I won't be.
Fascinating you mentioned that because you went through schooling here, you now work in public service. Talk about your own immigration journey.
So I moved to the U.S. in 2008 when I had just turned 15. My parents still live at home in the Bahamas. I had convinced them, you know, I wanted to be a lawyer in America, and I thought if I entered the schooling system earlier, that would be easier on me immigration-wise. And it's been a headache. It's been a headache for over a decade. I've had to get student visa after student visa after student visa, which never makes you eligible for permanent residence, a green card, any of those things. So I went to high school, I lived in Florida, and then I went to boarding school in West Virginia. I went to college in Ohio, and then I went to law school in New York, at which point you get 1 year of OPT if you were an international student, meaning you get 1 year you can work some job, and then you have to leave, unless you can find a job that could sponsor you. And that is almost impossible. There's a cap. Most jobs aren't eligible to sponsor you. They make it so that it's hard for companies to want to take it on because you can't pay for it. You can't incentivize them to want to do it. It's expensive and they have to take on and assume all of the fees. It's just a headache.
And why do you think it is so important for immigration to be understood in the United States?
Immigrants, I think people don't talk about enough about what it means to choose a country. You know, it's all this talk about, you know, when you're from here and, you know, but what is it? Shouldn't it mean something that you chose a place for you and you decided to build your life there and you're actively trying to contribute to society? And on top of that, to legally immigrate, you're forced to, right? You have to be the best of the best. In order to get a student visa, to get any kind of job afterwards, you have to work so much harder than all of your peers and all of your contemporaries, and you can't earn the same for it. Like, when I was in law school, I had to work 6 jobs to make myself competitive enough to be able to get a job to hopefully be able to be sponsored after, but I couldn't accept any money for it. So while my classmates are working 1 job, I have to work 6, and they're earning money. I can't get any money from it. So it was constantly like that. You're constantly forced to put yourself in this position where you're working so much harder. You can't really get any of the benefits of it, and you're just hoping to find a way to be able to stay because you've built your life here. But you can't really say that. When you go to the embassy, you can't really demonstrate an intent to remain, they would call it. It's very stressful being able to making your life in a country and not being able to call it home.
Well, there is one way left to you that you could become a citizen. Why don't you talk a little bit about that choice?
The only way I could become a citizen is by marriage. And, you know, in all the time I've been here, everyone's always like, well, why don't you just do it, get married? And I feel like immigrants are people that think marriage is important just like everybody else. Like, as a person, I should be able to, as an individual, decide I want to get married for love on my own time when I'm ready to do it, not because I'm being forced to. So to me, and living in a country in the last 13 years, you're constantly hearing about, you know, the right to marriage, how important marriage is, how sacred this is the next thing. And, you know, people forget, if it's sacred to you, can it be sacred to me as an immigrant? Why should I have to, you know, rush this timeline and make personal life decisions based on, you know, arbitrary immigration law? It's not fair. There should be another route, especially considering we're contributing. We're here, we're doing things every day. I'm admitted to the bar in New York State. I am a court-appointed lawyer. I'm the only, you know, I'm defending the constitutional rights of citizens every day, but yet I don't have the right to stay unless, you know, an American citizen decides they love me. It's not fair.
Olayemi, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And again, giving a personal perspective on what this immigration system, what it really means to try to do things the right way. And I will mention that not only are you doing a public service with your work, and we appreciate that. It's so necessary, particularly in the communities, particularly for the communities in Queens, but also the perspective that you're bringing to the work as an immigrant, as a Black woman, is especially valuable. So thank you for that, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.